There you go. And here we go. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. It is me, Dukect, and man, it's been one, as the naked ladies once said, it's been 1 week.
Yeah.
It has been long than 1 week. I mean, I took 1 week off, and because I wanted to finish the Chronicles 3. Then I did some good stuff there and everything else. Then before All Out and everything, you had Bobby Fish stuff and everything else. And it seems that was the tame stuff. Oh no. And because everything else after All Out, we should be talking about some good stuff. We should be talking about the great tag team match. We should be talking about Powerhouse Hobbs looking dominant. We should be talking about some really good stuff. Tony Storm and the storyline with Britt Baker and her crew getting out, and doing all that stuff. But no, we're talking about the Elite, CM Punk, Ace Steel, Larry the Dog, in a backstage scrum. And I
Yep.
have Rowdy C, Chris Moore, from all his, from Rowdy C Productions here to talk about this stuff. So say what's up, Rowdy.
Oh yeah, Duke. All I can say is, you know what? About sometime around Saturday evening of this past weekend, you have to think how many AEW fans were on high willing to trash WWE once again for people who did not like the way Clash at the Castle ended up being. And then it was like the entire wrestling world decided to send on AEW's All Out and give us the biggest hold my beer in wrestling history.
Yeah, it was a complete and total shit show. I am not even going to front because I am look at this and I'm just like, what in the world is going on? How can you? I mean, I said this stuff about CM Punk about when I talked about this in private with you, I talked in public with you. If he was like, I said this, including on this show, I'm done with the stuff that he's doing. I was with him with how WWE handles things and to him and such, but he has become like, look, if you're such a curmudgeon and everything, there is no time for it. There's no time for people say, for the curmudgeon and all that BS. I am tired of that stuff, and let's all move on from it. But now I'm just like, he's become so toxic to the point, and I'm like, yeah, he's gone. And quite honestly, it sucks with people because I was with him. I was watching some once again I was live for last year's Grand Slam. There's promos with him with Powerhouse Hobbs, which I enjoyed. I was here when he was like in DC. I think he fought. Sean Spears for a couple minutes and doing his CM Punk feud with MJF. It was some fun stuff and some good promos and everything. And a lot of people thought this was going to be their summer of Punk. Then he got hurt. Then John Moxley came in and just carried the. And by the way, John Moxley, he is the heart and soul of AEW. And after everything he's went through this past year, getting the alcoholism and such, and he's still dealing with everything else, and you're having to carry the intern championship, pay the company on his back, and now he's doing it again. He had one hell of a promo after MJF doing his little WWE is better stuff, which was stupid, and trying to. I'm like, why are you doing this now when your company is basically in flames? I don't care. That sort of thing. He really rallied the group. He rallied the people there, and I'm just happy for him because he has been that MVP for the longest time.
And now myself, listen, I have tried my best to not say a lot of stuff that I kind of feared about CM Punk for the longest time because I have friends who say they got into wrestling because of CM Punk. He got the stuff he did helped them get out of a lot of bad personal situations they were in, which is something I can totally identify with because I've been in those situations as well, and one thing or another helped me to get out of them. That being said, I can't say I'm completely surprised by what's ended up going on. This is, I mean, look, I think it's a situation where, yes, you look at some of the stuff CM Punk said about the state of WWE in that infamous podcast he did with Colt Cabana. There's a lot of stuff you can say that a lot of the stuff he said there might very well have been accurate. At the same time, you have to look and say that, yeah, maybe it's that CM Punk's not completely innocent of everything once in a while. And in fact, I look at CM Punk and Jon Moxley, Dean Ambrose, which way you prefer to call him, and they're almost polar opposites. I have got a lot of respect for Jon Moxley because when he departed from WWE and he went on Chris Jericho's podcast, because I listened to that one as well, his entire attitude basically came down to, look, I had a lot of good times in WWE, I had a lot of bad times, and it just came to a point where I needed a change. I can respect that greatly. It's just that Punk, no matter what he's done, even after he supposedly got his shot in what supposedly is the ultimate antithesis of WWE as far as pro wrestling goes in AEW, he can't get, he needs to always, he can't live on anything, it seems, except his vendetta against WWE and Vince McMahon and Triple H and who knows what else. There's never a point.
Go ahead.
There's never a point where he could just say, look, yeah, all that happened. I'm in someplace new, and now I want to just move on and focus on this. And that's the only thing he can do because, yes, I get it. A lot of people are going to ask him constantly over and over again about all that crap he went through in WWE. All he ever had to do in those situations, especially since signing with AEW, is saying, look, that's in the past. I'm focused on this now. And it could have been over with. And I definitely could have respected that. But he has to keep, it just seems like Punk is the type of person, and you know what? Maybe I'm a little like this as well. So I kind of know where he's coming from here. He's the type of person who always seems to have to stir the pot and cause trouble. And not just in kayfabe, not just in character. He's got to do it in real life in order just to keep the attention all on himself.
Yeah, and he just seems a dude lives on spite. And that's his I think that's one of the problems with him is that he just lives on that spite. And that, to me, that is just a poison pill that has just will at the end of the day will ruin you. And that to me shows he's not really I'm looking at this, I'm like, is he emotionally emotionally the type of player and such? I don't see. I'm like, man, this man should be. He. I honestly think I look at him and I'm like, man, this is a guy who could have been. The guy could have been. This was his moment, and now especially not just he's injured not once but twice. I'm just like, man, it was a bad time. Honestly, I get people wanting to have that summer of Punk. They felt like it was robbed by WWE. I think even I think that Brian Zane made a video about that, talked about that, and the squander and everything. And I get that. Me personally, I would have just said, let Hangman have his run, and they cut off Hangman's, cut him off, and I hate that. I hate the fact they had to cut him off there and to CM Punk and everything. And and even worse about all of this is that a lot of it's just a disappointment. I mean, this man who pretty much had a second chance to move on, right? He had that second chance, and then he squandered it because of some petty bullshit about backstage, this stuff. And honestly, he not only cost him, but he cost other people around there. And I'm gonna say this: the EVPs and everything. You're gonna talk about that stuff. I'm gonna say this, and I always were worried about this: is that the EVPs, Punk, and then the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega and such. I honestly thought that was a really bad idea to begin with. I honestly think if you want to take that backstage responsibility, then you have to hang them up. They cannot be wrestlers and cannot be EVPs at the same time. And I think Cody, what you said about it, we talked about this, and I think the reason why he's just like the less stress is like him going back and being a wrestler. That's what he wants to do. I think that what he wants to have. I wouldn't be surprised he might come back to AEW later on as a VP, retired and such, or WWE or whatever. But I think that should be. I think that's what just Jericho probably is going to be like. Okay, when I'm done, then I'll move to that position. That's what I think Paul Physique, aka Triple H, pretty much did. He was done. He was a lot of it was done. Even though he had, he was still wrestling, as a special attraction and such, but he was done. You know.
It harkens back. You mentioned Cody, and it definitely harkens back a lot to what his dad went through a lot, because I remember you talking about this, how everyone looked at Dusty Rhodes and said how his brief time in the late 80s in WWE or WWF, whichever you want to call it, was supposedly disgraceful for him when he had to wear the polka dot suit and dancing in the ring and everything. But I saw an interview with Dusty when he said, "Hey, look, that was the most fun I ever had as a pro wrestler, because then I only had to be a wrestler." And believe me, Dusty had to deal with, when he was involved with a booker in the NWA and Jim Crockett Promotions, the WCW, whichever it was. Yeah, he dealt with a lot of political garbage, dealing with the likes of Ric Flair and Jim Herd and who knows what else in there. So, and even though, maybe Cody looked at what was going on in AEW, remembered what his dad went through and said, maybe it just isn't for me. Maybe then also there was the fact that his role in running the show in AEW had been cut out from under him. And that's why, again, this entire situation that's going on right now in AEW, a lot of the fault and responsibility, we can say what we say about CM Punk, and maybe we should have seen this coming. But again, a lot of this has to fall on Tony Khan. Ever since Khan started doing an Eric Bischoff and started luring any guy who became a free agent let go by WWE, I just knew from that start that something like this was going to happen. You're bringing in it's mainly just how it's amazing how AEW basically became what a lot of people complained about WWE in stockpiling just way too much talent. I mean, there's just a situation where you sign all these name guys, you're going to put them on television more often than not because that's why you brought them in. There's just going to be a lot of guys who were there at the very start, who were at that very first all-in pay-per-view that led to the creation of AEW. They're going to get pushed aside, and there are going to be hurt feelings and bad blood going out between everyone. And that it combined with the fact that up to this point, Tony Khan has just never chosen to be any real type of authority figure. You can say whatever you want about what you don't like about Vincent K. McMahon or Triple H or something else they've done, but they in WWE knew that there has to be a time when they have to be tough,
The boss.
a tough authority for a figure, and lay down the law on some things. And this whole entire the situation of Tony Khan wants to be the guy that everybody likes at everything. Well, I know a lot of us don't like the situation, but sometimes when you're in charge of a business, you can't be the guy that everybody likes, especially since the old saying, you can't please all of the people all of the time. There are just way too many egos. And I said this before. I posted this on Twitter, said one of the big issues with professional wrestling is you have a lot of people, especially because quite a few of them did probably get their start in actual competitive sports. They've got the egos of a competitive athlete in a situation where you can't compete and really earn what you get on merit. There's always going to be politics and popularity and just the guys in charge having to make a decision on, we're putting this guy in the spotlight because we think he's going to draw in viewers. And it's a situation where not everyone's ego is going to be sated in this situation. And as the person in charge, you're gonna have to just lay down the lettering that said, look, some people have to be here, and some people are just gonna have to not be in that situation, and you have to work as a team somebody's got to be the one to put over the other guy. Somebody's got to be the jobbers. That's just how it works. Because like I've always said, professional wrestling is more of a show production. It's more like a stage play than it is an actual sporting event. And as someone who's been in theater, there are people there. Someone's going to be the lead role in the shows. Somebody's going to be the supporting cast. Somebody's got to work the stage props situation. They got to be on the running crew and everything. And it's all about, one way or the other, it's all about working together as a cohesive unit to put on the best show possible. And it's a situation where, like I said, some people, their egos might not be allowed them to do that. And that's when you got to put your foot down if you're the one in the authority.
Oh, yeah. You have to be that type of person. You have to be the boss. And that, to me, shows that what Tony Khan, again, he's not really, I think he never had that type of, hopefully he does learn this lesson. And I think at this point, at this point, a lot of people are saying that pretty much Punk has burned so many bridges at this point that even if he came back and did all the my culpas in the world, it's like, it's done. Like he can't come back. And he just need to cut the losses and fire him. And
I've said this before. I said that pro wrestling is more of a stage production. Tony Khan is the director here. That's I think what a lot of fans don't seem to realize is that I had this on the top of my head here, so I apologize. I'm thinking about it over again. Is that what you have here is a professional wrestling show has to be like a television episode. It's got to have a storyboard and a script and segments where this is going to happen, and everybody has to work together. And it's like a lot of people, and I think there may be an issue with too many wrestlers nowadays, now that the indie circuits are getting bigger. A lot of professional wrestlers, they're more like the stand-up comics who are used to doing their own act individually by themselves. And when they get into an actual promotion, be it AEW or WWE or Major League Wrestling or Impact, is a situation where you can't just do your own act. You have to work with what the idea is that the director has to put on a show and do your part in it. Now, if the fans look at what the director is putting on and they don't like it from their perspective, then yes, the director is going to have to change things up in some way or form or fashion to put out something that the consumers are going to like. But if he really for the moment, so long as he believes that what he's putting on is going to work, and if there's been some indication that it is working, then everyone else, but that the director oversees, the performers to the technician to everyone else, they've got to be able to fall in line to put on the best show and work as a team. They can't be cowboys anymore, to quote Superman in the first episode of Justice League.
Yeah, they have to be, they have to work as a consistent unit. And I do feel, by the way, at this point, not only Punk should be fired, I think Kenny and the Young Bucks, not only, they stripped him of the trios title, which I agree to it. Personally, I don't care, I enjoyed the trios match as much as anyone, but I honestly think they shouldn't have won. I think it should have been either, the Best Friends or, the Dark Order and such, because let them win something. It would be nicer to let them win something. Because honestly, that's my booking story, whatever. But also, they should not be EVPs anymore. They should not have been EVPs. They should not be. And I would honestly, Tony Khan should set up right now, saying, you know what, you started this thing. It started good in this early company and everything. That's nice, but if you're gonna have this title of EVP, either you're hanging them up, or because we can't have you do this anymore, and everything else. Your book while I was doing the show, because I'll have other people do it. Or two, give up the titles. Get up those EVP titles. Right there. They that to me, that is the problem. And again, remember, before all this stuff went down, Kenny Omega had that little mandatory meeting, and it didn't go well.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them didn't go well. But then afterwards, when they were gone, a lot of people said they, This Dynamite feud is Dynamite. They had a little bit, and people were liking Chris Jericho. They're loving Moxley. They're loving the stuff there. That sort of thing. I think maybe that whole, people saying Omeganism, which, I saw that thing trend a bit on Twitter. I'm like, it looks like it had a pretty much of a rough start. So I think that's what it is at this point. If Tony Khan really wants to really be that, they need to put other people there. I mean, hey, put Mark Henry in that position. He ain't wrestling. Tall, the big, Paul White. He should be there. After his Captain of Sano stuff is pretty much done, which they're still planning to do, which I'm all for, by the way. You saw, you know what I'm saying, right?
Well, exactly.
When they're done, and you can do all. And like I said, if hopefully cooler heads prevailed, and they could come back. I want the elites to come back. Hopefully, and it'd be nice if they came back for the big show in New York. It'd be nice. I got tickets for. But I think if they want to go longer with the suspension, I have no problem with that either. If they suspend it till Full Gear, I'm for that as well, or longer until everything's okay. You're gonna be that sort of thing. I think that would be I'd be okay with that. You need to have some new law, new stuff. They are building this thing up. They have new talent directors and everything else there. So I think it's time for them to really, again, let me just say this, like I said before, and I say this again, they need to have people in positions of power to say, you know what, here you go, what we need to do and what we're not to do. Because again, Tony Khan, these issues started, the stuff there was starting when Jonathan Gresham came in and just started cussing out Tony Khan back when in the Ring of Honor pay-per-view. And now he's gone.
It just goes to show that they right now in AEW, they've definitely got to get some stuff together as far as what direction they have, who is in charge, and where are they going to go from here. And you'll like it or not, that's one issue where they've got an upper hand there over in WWE right now, because there clearly is a situation going on in Stamford, Connecticut, where they have got a plan in place now, at least as far as who's going to be in charge now, who's going to be overseeing what, who's going to be in charge of what. And I think they may actually have a direction on where they're going to go with the championship and the storylines as of right now. And maybe that's resulted in a result at Clash at the Castle that a lot of people might not like, but it said I really just have a feeling that this point in time they've got a set direction, and as long as the talent is there and healthy and able to do it, they're not going to deviate for it. They're not going to do any hotshot booking on this because they've got a plan in place.
But the problem is that plan isn't going to be good, because right now their whole thing, ladies and gentlemen, the whole WWE plan is just having The Rock versus Roman, and it's for the
tribal
chief
maybe
thing, if it does. And I've been talking about this. I'm like, why would Rock do this? It doesn't. I'm like, the last time Rock got in a match, he was injured 5 minutes in.
I will,
and
say
I'm
this.
Like, no, and and I'm going to say this before you get into this.
That's the thing.
It's just that if it just goes to show once again they're putting older talent though. And not to my and I'll say this, AEW doing the same thing as well, putting older talent, and not and like, well, Roman Reigns doesn't need this. In fact, he, with his health issues, he's recovering from cancer. He might be getting out soon. So, and I'm like, I'm worried in like the next couple of like my fear is like, who's the next person up? Who's that next person up? And I'm like, so Cody Rhodes. I'm like, Cody Rhodes up there in his 30s. Who's that next young guy they've been like really doing? Is like Braun Breaker. Okay. You have who else? And don't say Austin Theory. That dude is he's basically honestly, with all that stuff baggage on Austin Theory and everything else, that is one bad type of speaking out stuff that WWE does not need that type of stuff right now at that point. So at this point, I'm like, it's the journey. To me, it could be fine, but destination could be really bad.
I'll let you.
upset.
I'll say this. You did bring this up. I'm not 100% sure if it's going to be Rock and Roman now, because I've actually heard, and maybe I need to take anything I hear online with a grain of salt. I admit that, but more I hear about it is that I am hearing rumors that now the plan is for Cody Rhodes to take the belt from Roman at WrestleMania. I never really believed that there was going to be Rock versus Roman for the championship, unless perhaps Roman wins that, because I do not see, I don't think they're going to have someone like Rock, who they know would be a part-timer at best, take the belt at their biggest spectacle of all. There's a reason they put the belt on him in at the Royal Rumble back then to set up Rock Cena too, but that's a whole other situation. I will say this, and I think you were alluding to this. The biggest issue right now that WWE has is they need to find the next Cena. And I think it's been clear Roman Reigns just isn't that guy. And that's kind of the situation where they're in a position where they've got to find that where they need to find that next guy who can be the transcendent mainstream star that can put WWE back in the limelight like Cena was able to do. Now, can Cody be that person? Like you said, he is in his 30s, which, there was a time 30, 40 years ago where, you didn't become the top dog in wrestling until you got around that age. But that's that's a whole different setting back then. I will say this, it is a situation where, and I know this is difficult for a lot of fans to deal with, is that you have to remember Triple H just got in charge. And I think, if anything, I do think he wants to find that next major star. But it is going to take time. I have to say that. You got to keep in mind, John Cena broke in 2002, I believe it was. And it took about nearly a couple of years for him to rise to the situation where they decided, okay, it's time to make him a major star and have him win at WrestleMania. In fact, I look at Roman Reigns right now, and maybe there's a bit comparison to what they did with JBL in 2004. A lot of people have said that JBL surpassed Kevin Nash for maybe WWE's worst champion ever. At least it was probably the worst as far as pay-per-view buys, from what I recall. But I think they stuck with it through those bad times because they knew the end goal was, we're going to have Cena beat him at WrestleMania. They probably didn't think that Cena at that time was going to be the superstar that they thought Batista was going to be, which is why Batista was in the main event of WrestleMania 21. But obviously they thought that, especially, Cena is going to be our next major star, one of our next major stars. So we're going to get through this and have him win his first world title on our biggest show and then take it from there. Like I said, can Cody Rhodes be that? Well, hopefully, at the very least, Cody, if the plan is now to put the belt on Cody at WrestleMania next year, that hopefully he can at least be somewhat of a stopgap for maybe a year or so, that they could put the belt on until they find someone else younger and maybe even more over with the crowd, that they can eventually transfer to him in another year or so down the line. But for what it's worth, Duke, I'm going to say this, and maybe a lot of people might not agree with me on this, but I may as well tell you, I do think that at the very least, they've got a situation where no matter who exactly is the champion, they're putting on some more compelling matches right now, I think. I can tell you this much. I did watch I'll tell you this whole story. I was watching the main event of Clash at the Castle. Now, at the time, I was watching it on my phone because I'm in the middle of Arlington, Texas, with no car, which, if you know anything about Arlington, Texas, is an extremely dumb thing to do, but it was my choice, my volition. So I'm standing there in the street, like on the sidewalk, waiting for my ride share to come that I clicked on from via Arlington's local service. But I'm there watching while waiting, and eventually it gets to a point where I realize that ride share hasn't come by the time they were supposed to, and I can't get myself to turn off the Peacock app and double check to absolutely double confirm that my ride canceled on me. I can't do that until this match is over. I have not been that vested in a men's pro wrestling match in a very long time, because some people might say they knew what was going to happen. They're lying. And maybe you had a good feeling Roman was going to retain. You didn't know how it was going to happen. For me, I went through that entire match not knowing who was going to win. And I think they did a very good job with the match itself, with so many near falls, so many false finishes, that it just got you wrapped into it. And so maybe even if the result on that night was not what a lot of people wanted, it was still absolutely compelling to the end. And it's got me at least curious as to what's going to happen now. What are they going to do with Kevin Owens now, who I think they're really setting him up to be a major player on the main event stage, which doesn't surprise me because I think Triple H has always liked Kevin Owens. I've always loved Kevin Owens, for that matter, and whatnot. I do think that even if they're going to keep the World Championship on Roman Reigns for a considerable more time, I think they're still going to try to find ways to utilize a lot of their other stars more effectively, more efficiently than perhaps was done over the last couple of years under Vince. And I do think it's going to be more compelling and more interesting in the foreseeable future.
Well, I do. I watched Clash of the Castle. I was entertained mostly because of the Gunther and Sheamus thing. That was fun. You had, again, I liked it, the whole thing, and I think there was some good stuff there. But again, the problem is, and I think there is some people, and I was like, my fear of Roman turning heel, and it's now coming true. He's getting more cheers now. And the baby faces are looking stupid because they can't seal the deal. And I always say, Roman should have a big deal. I'm like, you know what happens when the person becomes so dominant and he is already likable and such, and he can deliver good matches, he's going to be cheered. And now look at him, and that's the problem.
That's kind of an issue. Well, that goes back to something I've always said about wrestling fans in general. Although I did say that another match I did watch in at Clash of the Castle was the women's championship match with Liv Morgan. And I did think that the way that match went on in the end, I was hoping that maybe that would be some type of redemption, that people would stop, would go back to cheering her. But you have to remember this. It's almost like there is some type of natural instinct in way too many wrestling fans to cheer for the heel, to go against the grain. I mean, we'll say it probably started with the NWO back in, but even back then,
you could go back to the Four Horsemen if you want to go there.
The Four Horsemen, you can go back to Superstar Billy Graham even, in the old Worldwide Wrestling Federation run by the Eldervits. The whole story there about how how Graham really got over during his run in his championships, and basically what the Eldervins did to screw him over to put his guy Bob Backlund on the belt is a story in of itself. That you think that his son was the only one that started, screwing over popular wrestlers. Now, or to say nothing about, the whole situation with what Hulk Hogan went through with Nick Bockwinkel in the AWA and everything. There just seems to be a situation where so many wrestling fans, maybe because they look at themselves as the anti-establishment and whatnot, they want to cheer for the asshole, for lack of a better term. I mean, there was a reason Stone Cold Steve Austin had to convert to being a babyface when he never wanted to be one.
But I honestly will say that's part of it. But also when your hero characters are not compelling, if your hero characters are not compelling enough, if they're like sit there, or they're like, to me, like, okay, people love the Joker, but they love Batman more. People love Lex Luthor, but they love Superman more. People love, for example, Thanos, but they love the Avengers more. If your good guys are more, if your heroes are relatable, if your heroes are, they connect with the fan base, then you can have people who like the villains, right? You can have them, but at the end of the day, they will still cheer the heroes when they finally win, right? They were cheering when when Captain America lifted that hammer and such. They were cheering, when people liked it when Superman came in and the end of Justice League saving the day. They were cheering when that type of stuff there. When these fictional characters do and such, I look and see how you when you manage them. You can't have the baby faces and good guys whine, complain. Same thing with Liv Morgan. She was whining, complaining, stuff that a villain would do.
You make a good point.
That's the problem, is that once you make your character, heck, there's a reason why I love Toni Storm. The reason why she left WWE and such, she got a pie right in her face with Charlotte Flair. And she didn't even fight back. She just looked sad and like, why should I cheer for that person? Why would you cheer a person who looks like a complete loser? And the villain says you're a loser, you get pit in the face, you'll get embarrassed, you still lose, and you don't fight back. What person would cheer that?
You do say some good points, but at the same time, you make the comparisons to the comic strip heroes and everything. But you have to remember, there are some people that, they hate Superman because they say he's too much of a good guy. I mean, they
say
say
Captain America too. But,
they say they only like Batman when he basically comes close to. They prefer. It's like people prefer Christopher Nolan's Batman far more than they could say they like Adam West Batman and whatnot, or even Kevin Conroy's animated Batman and whatnot. There is a large number of people that just think it's cool to not like the good guy, so to speak. And I do think there are a lot of people like that who gravitate to professional wrestling. I think you take a lot of people who hated. I think if you took a Venn diagram of people who hate Superman and people who hated John Cena, it's gonna be very, very close together. Let's put it that way. And I think WWE did the best they could to make Cena a compelling character. He was someone who was like Captain America almost, in always devoted to his goals of trying to be a role model for children and trying to be the best person and not ever fighting back. That's why I always loved how, for nothing else, they stood by their guns and never turned Cena heel, because I thought there should have always been that one guy who never has to keep flip-flopping back and forth like Jericho and the Big Show always did.
Well, there was a time that he was going to be doing it. There was, I think, around 2013, saying there was going to be new stuff with him, saying his new catch was a Fear My Name. There was going to have a new stuff with Cena. They were going to put him heel, but they just got cold feet.
And I think that was the best thing they did, to be perfectly honest. I think that just for now, maybe a lot of people aren't going to agree with me on this, but I think that because they kept him being that type of Captain America, Superman type of personality, that I think it gave a lot of people something to look forward to. Anything like, and I think that, and also that they didn't just give in to the masses who sometimes don't know if they know what they really want. Like, I'll bring back the whole thing with Clash at the Castle is that like the one thing a lot of people complained about, and of course because I think CM Punk said this himself in that shoot podcast, that supposedly the number one problem the WWE had for years was they didn't know what to do. They didn't have any type of long-term plan. I could be wrong on this, but it does seem like, at least for now, for the time being,
they have a
long-term plan, and people are getting upset at that just because at the moment it doesn't look like the plan is something they want. But for a lot of these fans, it looks like they really don't have a plan either. It's like all they want to do is say, just get the belt off of Roman as soon as possible. You've got this pay-per-view with Drew McIntyre in his home country. Just put the belt on him now. Then what? I don't know.
Personally, if I honestly think it worked, actually, if they would have done that, I think they could have done something really interesting. Cody wins Rumble, have Drew versus night one, Cody versus Drew, because there's story there. Both guys, had, you can say they failed in their first major run in WWE. They had to leave. They became something else. Now Cody has his opportunity. Drew has his opportunity. Build that type of stuff up there, and you can do the Rock stuff there at night two. That would have been a lot cleaner, and the fans would be like, that's good, and that type of way of doing it. But that being said, let's get back to the AEW quagmire. To me, when I say what's going on there, a lot of people are going to say probably I think right now the whole thing is probably gonna be Danielson winning the championship and then dropping to MJF, or it was gonna be Moxley. If Moxley and that, that sort of thing. And honestly, they're still trying to do the whole Punk. Oh, he's the ROH store, which just doesn't, it rings hollow, and it does ring even more hollow when you're trying to be the WWE type of like your backstage, your top stuff is on your stuff is on fire right now. You shouldn't be doing this backstage type of smarky stuff. I would tell Andrew, look, just say that I'm better, move on, don't do that stuff again.
I will say,
I don't do that stuff again. Personally, I never liked that stuff. It's like, unless they're doing something really stupid. And I believe all fair love war and stuff like that.
And that's why I said from the beginning that happened, the media scrum was a bad idea. I mean, how did you not expect to put on something like a media session where the reporters were not going to be in on the act? They're not going to be.
Oh, no, there was.
And everything.
By the way, there was some reporters that were going to be in the whole thing. They were actually doing that type of stuff, which was a dumb idea in the first fucking place.
But if maybe some of them were, but if you had any of these Brian Alvarez's or Dave Meltzers or whatnot, if you had any of these actual wrestling journalists, and yes, I just put up the air quotes while saying journalists, if you're gonna have some of these guys in a media session like this, how could you not expect any one of them to not eventually say a question that any of the guys up in front of the microphone are not going to be comfortable with, or they're not going to be able to hold back in saying something that other people are going to regret. That happens all the time in real sport media sessions. How did you not expect it would happen in something that is not in wrestling, that's not 100% being controlled by the bookers and promoters and everything else? That was just told me again that it's so much of Tony Khan trying to pander to the online fans and trying to make it look as much like real athletics as possible. And it's what I said from the beginning. That just never, ever works in wrestling.
And I would say this, WWE started this as well. They have and I hate that stuff too.
I'm with you.
They should just like cut it off entirely. But I think the one thing I would say about all this is that, to me, I honestly wish, if they really wanted to do something really good, is this whole thing, just have like backstage interviews and just be done with it. Just say, here's the backstage interview, talk to the person there and be done. And now when I look at this whole mess and everything, hopefully my thing is like they have learned a lot of lessons, and hopefully there's going to be backstage stuff. And then again, there was like on Monday you had like there was this like huge backstage thing or whatever, like what was that acting that movie thing on there? I think Chris Pine and Harry Styles had a thing going down or something,
right?
And then before this podcast got on, before this whole thing got started, UFC I'm not kidding you. The UFC backstage stuff, that thing went out of control. I'm just like, what is going on? I mean, at this point, I'm like, there was a fights broke out in backstage for UFC 279. Dana had to cancel the press conference.
I think I heard something about that.
I'm like, at this point, where is the it's just like there has been so much like crazy stuff here. What's going on again? I mean, UFC it is nasty. They're nasty and stuff over there. I mean, Conor, that dude who was like throwing like chairs and everything else at like a bus or whatever, injuring people, and he had no consequences. So I'm like, that's
it's just such a crazy situation. Like I'm gonna let you know about this. Almost from once it got revealed that Vince McMahon was stepping down and Triple H was taking over. Ever since that happened, in the months and weeks that have gone on there, I personally myself have been wondering if I'm going to bring back the Wrestling Mark show, bring back that character, and just use it to basically, because yes, the Mark is a huge show for WWE. I've never made that. I've always made that pretty clear. And I just do a show where he's just ripping in to AEW fans about everything's going wrong for them and everything's going right. I had an idea for that. I ended up scrapping it, and then I ended up actually recording a video where the mark just says, actually guys kind of just reflects my own view, what I thought was my own view at the time, and saying, look, I was going to do something to trash it, but I just don't feel the energy of doing it. So I'm just gonna send this message that whatever promotion you like, just try and enjoy wrestling as it is. I actually recorded that, I think, on Friday, and actually set it to premiere on YouTube on Monday. And then after all the crap that went down with the All In pay-per-view and the Clash of the Castle, I ended up canceling that posting, and I'm still not sure what I'm going to do in this situation, because just everything is absolutely crazy going on as to whether or not it's going to be worth making wrestling videos with everything else I've got going on at this time.
Oh yeah, I mean, some would say they love the chaos, but to me, I'm just looking back and I'm just like, yeah, I mean, I made a nice little video about some indie stuff, House of Glory, stuff. I was doing more indie, pretend wrestling and doing AEW. I was planning to do an AEW All Out review, but I was like, man, I'm just too tired because that stuff is way too damn long.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, yeah, I'll do that later. And then all this stuff happens, and I'm just sitting there. I'm like, what is this whole the mess? And my hope is that lessons are being learned. I mean, Punk should be fired. The EVP should be no longer VPs or whatever. At this point, or if they can, they're on. I don't know what type of thin ice at that point, but I don't know. But I think that should be on the table at least. And then after that, I mean, what else is there? What else? I mean, I'm looking at the AEW Fight Forever, video games company had CM Punk right there, and I'm just like, man, whoo, man, that is just terrible timing. It is just terrible timing, and now I don't know what you do at this point. Do they just delay the game even more to get him out of the game? Do they just say, okay, he's here, and then just hopefully ignore it? I mean, what else can you do at this point?
It just makes me thankful I've still got soccer to fall back on. First place Arsenal just won their first Europa League game earlier today, so I've got some positives going on right now.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's what it, it's just that a lot of people are just, weird. It's just going, getting this weird stuff is going on now. And my hope is that things finally calm down. And, what with the whole Austin Ash stuff, that's going to be a real big test with, doing Rampage and, a Dynamite together. And, that sort of thing. I just look at all this stuff, I mean, there was so much good stuff there. I mean, seeing, again, All Out, Jade continuing her undefeated streak. You had, again, Swerve and Our Glory and Acclaim had one of the best tag matches of the year. Great stuff. And I can't wait to see them run it back at Arthur Ashe. It's gonna be great. And I see, the whole, Wardlow and FTR, that little stuff with the Mostly Machine Guns and Jay Lethal, good stuff. And Dax's daughter, pinning Sanjay Dutt, getting the victory there. It was like good stuff. There's some wholesome stuff there, and it's just forgotten about. Hell, I said the main event was actually really good, being Punk and Moxley. I thought there was really good stuff there. And then this shit, man. And it pisses me off because there's so many people there. And I could put myself there too. Are just angry, disappointed, and downright just, this is again like just, surprised. But then if you look at the history of Punk, you look at the history of these things, it's like it shouldn't be a surprise. It shouldn't be a surprise, but at all, And like we talked, I saw this on but you saw this on Twitter. Exactly, he's pretty much got booed when he showed on Dynamite and everything. So it's like you're saying he's pretty much have to be like Vince McMahon, and I'm like, people hate that, but it's pretty much he has to have that type of spine and a little bit of that cold heart into it to be that Vince McMahon boss.
And I would say this might be the worst thing that Tony Khan's gonna have to deal with. But the first game of the season for the Jaguars is probably this weekend, so who knows how much worse it's gonna get for him.
Oh, but you know, he's the Jaguars are facing against the Washington Dumpster Fire, so they're gonna get an easy W there.
So you've got a tank bowl for the first very week of the NFL already?
Oh yes. So at the end of the day, though, I guarantee you, both Tony Khan and both it's not probably chilling at the same yacht at that point. Who knows? But you know what? Before I wrap all of this stuff up, and again, thank you so much for joining me, Rowdy. My thing is this: is that looking at this whole situation, lessons should be learned. And like I said, there is the new talent stuff. And let me just again bring that up. There was new talent, relation stuff. They're expanding their relationship team. You know, vice president. Again, there was a lot more. Vice president. I mean, QT Marshall was vice president of show and creative coordination. Tony Schiavone, who was Tony Khan leaned on heavily as him being the senior producer and special advisor to talent. And and funny thing is, Pat Buck and Christopher Daniels, they were down there, and then they were now suspended as well. So it's crazy, isn't it? It's just like this was again like a month ago. A month ago, they actually were doing expansion of talent relations and development team, which I was happy for. I was like, this is good. And now two of them, Pat Buck and Christopher Daniels, they're now gone because of all this stuff. It's insane, man. It's crazy. Yeah. But like I said, the positive, he leaned on Tony Schiavone since he has experience on this stuff. So hopefully, after everything has happened, my own thing is hope is that they actually expand more, opportunities for more talent. More, I honestly think more ladies, get a shot. More women matches get on there, which has been an issue of AEW for a long time of that. I hope that this will have more promos and women to have more. The elite are now gone. Maybe there'll be more people. Sam Death Triangles getting the opportunity. Maybe Best Friends have more promos and more people that DB the Blackpool Combat Club and the Jericho Appreciation Society. That looking like it's going to be fun. There are going to be more opportunities. Like I said, people like say Miro, who should be, looked up there. And I haven't even talked about the whole Malachi Black situation, which people say, oh, Malachi Black is leaving. Like, no, he got a serious back injury. Mm-hmm. People seem to forgot about that. They talked about a serious back injury, which they finally found a nerve that he's like, okay, we found this nerve that will, that was active, so we can actually help fix your back or whatever. And now they found one, and he's fixing his back, but he felt like all this pressure, and he's like pretty much gone for a while. I think he's going to heal himself mentally and such. So that's why I think he's gone as well. So that, like I said, I worry about that, but overall though, I do have a slight bit of optimism. And my hope is that this is not the end of AEW. I don't want the WWE to have a monopoly again. I don't want to have that type of stuff here again, because it hurts everybody.
I will say this, like you don't, and I think I pointed this out. You don't have to. I don't think you have to worry about that as far as like backstage turmoil among the performers and management. That's not going to kill WWE. That's going to kill AEW. What you should worry about is David Zaslav and if his cohorts that are taking over the Warner Turner networks. That could be a situation because, like I said, as bad as WCW got, it could have revived itself. It could have recovered. It was just the fact that Turner Networks got taken over by someone who just flat said, "I want wrestling off these networks." Period. Now, is David Zaslav going to be that type of person? That's a wait and see.
To say this and the David Zaslav thing, he likes cheap entertainment. And then let me tell you something. Other than reality TV shows, What's cheaper than pro wrestling?
Maybe you might be right there. Well, meanwhile, I will say this: I do not wish the I'm not gonna stand around and hope for the complete end of AEW. On the Sam side, I've got some positive views. I've got a lot of positive hope with WWE right now, to the point where, I find out the Royal Rumble's back in San Antonio next year. I might just go and scrounge a ticket. That would be the third time I've gotten to see the Royal Rumble down in the Alamo City. So, maybe we'll see on that.
My hope one day is that WWE actually has one of those big pay-per-views. They only had one Survivor Series, I think it was a couple years back, but yet no WrestleMania, because
I think SummerSlam was at Washington once.
Oh yeah, it was, and they did great business. But for whatever reason, WrestleMania is just like they're like. I asked that question to Seth Rollins. I think it was an awesome con way back in 2017 or whatever. He says, "Well, DC's big and all, but it's like he's whiffling and such." And I'm like, man, we sold out multiple times for y'all, man. Why can't? I mean, heck, like I said,
I'll say this number one problem. I mean, would you think they'd want to put WrestleMania in a place like the Redskins Stadium?
Oh,
how much of an absolute toy? That's probably it more than anything else. It's just DC area just doesn't have the facility that they want WrestleMania to be in, like what they've got at SoFi in Los Angeles next year, like what they've got here at Dallas with Jerry World, even though I can't stand that place.
The acoustics were terrible, by the way.
Yeah, just like what they've got down in a number of places in Florida and Miami and Tampa and everything else there. It's just a situation where, I don't think DC probably just doesn't have the facilities for a WrestleMania right now at this point. That's what would be my number one guess.
Oh yeah, I think like I said, National Park is a really beautiful stadium. They could definitely do WrestleMania there. But that's another conversation for another time. I don't want to keep you too long, Rowdy. Against you, thank you so much for joining me on this, this crazy week. And by the time, at this point, I wouldn't be surprised after we get off the air. The Rams backstage, the NFL Rams like they will have another backstage fight, and then it's going to be more and more stuff like this. So it's a trend, ladies and gentlemen. And who doesn't say AEW doesn't set trends? Who does exactly? Anyway, thanks very much for watching.
Stay rowdy, my friends.
Peace and love. We'll see y'all when I see y'all later.
Okay, I'm gonna say this.